Hi, I am Oskar from Poland. I'm the Kruleboyz currently player. I have played the army for a couple of months right now. I took it because it's just an underdog army. For me, it's always a fun to find something special in these armies that have difficulties. Right now, I'm trying to apply for Team Poland to go to the World Championship with the Kruleboyz because I think that they can counter a lot of armies that are now in the in the top meta and that are playable. I think that the army can do a lot of things that people do not expect about it, and in a lot of situations you can surprise your opponent with what you can do with the army that had for a lot of time the the worst win rate in the game,
Yes,
basically.
by a lot. Worst win.
Yeah,
By a lot.
by a lot, by
By a
really a
lot.
lot.
By a lot, yeah. So I guess actually that's a really good first question that I have right away is you said that opponents don't always know what Kruleboyz are capable of, right? They are able to do some tricks or something sneaky. Do you find when you're playing other players at tournaments that people even know what the Kruleboy army does?
A lot of players knew the basic mechanics, like that you the mortal wounds on the fives and sixes. They do know that. But for example, how the WA works, a lot of people don't know, and it could be really sneaky to at once fight with your general and with the nine unit of nine bolt boys, which do a lot of damage, surprisingly, for a shooting unit in melee. So they could be great. A lot of people do not think about dirty tricks, which are random, but you can do a lot of strange mind games with your opponent. With, for example, pulling your opponent's screen into their deep strike,
Right.
which a lot of times can change the game because you can teleport them unit. So yeah, a lot of people knew the basic of the Kruleboyz, but it's usually okay. You do mortal wounds and you have bad save. That's mostly all.
Right. It's like, oh, right. You have these archers that are I've heard are really good, and they deal a lot of
Yeah,
mortal wounds. Okay, okay. No, because I've had a similar experience playing with somebody where, when I called the Wa, they were like, oh, like you get to fight 3 times in a row. I'm like, yeah, and that won me the game. Right. I was able to turn that into like an advantage and win the game. So let's have a look at your list. So I have your list here up on the screen here. So, Big Yellers. Why did you decide to play Big Yellers instead of most people play Grinning Blades, right? Grinning Blades, I would say, is the most popular faction, but or sub faction. Why did you decide to go with Big Yellers?
firstly, because you can reinforce bolt boys 2 times, and unit of nine is far better than unit of six because you need less buffs. You can use one shaman to buff them all with poison. That's the first thing, and then because of the fact that bolt boys are battle line, you do not have to take gut ripas,
Yeah.
which are unfortunately really bad
Yep.
in my opinion.
Oh, everyone's
And
opinion. Yep.
yeah, and because of that, you can take allies that can make your screens. Because God Tripas, despite of their stats overall, are really bad screen. Because for 150 points now, I believe,
Yep.
10 models, 5 up save. Okay, it might be good, but it's really sketchy to play them. And the second thing is, I do believe that currently in our meta, the worst opponents for Kruleboyz and the one that you pick the other sub legions to fight with is shooting. And except Slanesh and let's call the Daughters of Cain, you do not have such a big threats because KO will land 9 inches from you and get out of the box.
Yes.
So you will not stop them that way. So with them you have to bring more screens to the battle so you can
Uh oh.
Yes, the battle line, the bold boys being the battle line, it helps your army because you do not have to take other possibilities for battle line like Gatripas and Slitas,
Yeah,
like Hobgrot.
I've seen people take Moonclan Stabbas quite a bit in orcs in general, right? Moonclan Stabbas are quite good. But here's a question for you. I've never seen Spore Splatter Fanatics in a Kruleboyz list. Can you tell me what role they play in your list and how they work? Like I've never seen them played before. I'm super curious.
Okay, firstly, they can be a little bit of a distraction for your enemy because shooting armies will have to kill them to shoot into you, and a lot of people also think that you cannot shoot through them. Yes, you cannot, but you can move them in your own phase, so they will not be in the middle of the battlefield. So that's the first thing. Second one, it's pre-game move, which is great
Nice.
because units that want to alpha strike you with teleports, they cannot, and you can deploy your bold boys really far, which is
So
great.
so you're using them to block line of sight, right?
Yep.
And the pre-game move is just an easy way to zone out really
Yeah.
aggressive teleporting or alpha striking armies. Okay, that's really interesting. I like it. That's very interesting.
And also their last part is a lot of people want to kill them with something that is not really powerful because they're not worth it, and suddenly they can stay one of them in combat. They have they have 10 bravery, so they will not run away,
Right.
and you stop your enemy again. They have to stay there, can retreat and try to just shoot the enemy out of the board.
Right, because even if they have a 6-up save and 1 wound. So you're right.
Yeah,
So nobody wants to overcommit. Nobody wants to put a lot of resources into killing them. But if they don't and there's one left over, and you're right, they can't fail a bravery unless they're reinforced, right? They can't fail their check. So that's cool.
and
Interesting.
especially in the first battle round, because the dirty trick that give you a -1 to wound
Right.
is for your opponent, not for hitting into your units in particular. So it also applies to them.
And you're 2 drops, right?
Yeah, I am. So a lot of times, because now people will take the battalion for the extra dice
Yeah.
for magic because it's really useful. I do not. I don't play Gobsbreck, so I did not want to waste drops for that. Because of Gobsbreck, of course, it's no-brainer basically. He
Yep.
loves the battalion, so I can a lot of times decide who will go first thanks to that,
And
which is, as we know, quite useful.
yeah, and how often, like, are you choosing to go first or second when you do get to pick?
A lot of times, if you have the possibility to choose who will go first, your opponent, after you deploy your bold boys, will put his most important units outside of this 27-inch range
Yep.
because of the sub-legions, of the big yellers, and then you do not really have the need to go first. There are some armies that it could help because of the magic that Kruleboyz have, because the Kruleboyz lore is for the army basically the best. It cannot be better. Maybe a little bit of a high value for casting, but the debuffs that you can give to your enemy are perfect. They are slower to move. They fail charges easier. You can shut off wards. Great stuff. Everything you need to slow down your opponent.
Yeah, we do have a great spell lore. That's true. So, what I'm hearing you say is that you often choose to go second. So, if you're
Yeah.
choosing to go second, what and where are you super sneakying?
I do try to super sneaky Hobgrots
Okay.
into the before the enemy lines, because then you again slowing them down. They cannot go out as easily from their deployment, especially if your opponent has some big piece of terrain uh, somewhere in their deployment. You can just try to screen close to it. and it blocks a lot of ways for your opponent to develop onto the rest of the board. And most people don't really like to um, run head on into you, because you can get double turn, and with your shooting you can just
Yeah.
blow them off of the board. And with the good rolls, it's even easier. So they will stay outside of this 9 inch with them. If they don't have a shooting or a really powerful magic to kill all units, they can last. I had games where they died in like the third round, because people did not want to come so close to them, because they will be in the range of the Bold Boys.
That's interesting. So you're positioning them forward aggressively, but within 27 inches.
And a
So,
lot of
yeah.
the second usage of the
No,
second
no, go ahead.
usage
Yeah.
of Super Sneaky is for the shamans, because a lot of time people will try to go outside of your unbinds for some 1 or 2 key
Ah.
spells of their own, and when they are 13.5 inch from you, you can say like, okay, so it's 1 inch further.
Yep, I've seen lots of people do that with Gobsbreck. So
Yeah.
why no Gobsbreck? Everyone is in Big Wa in Kruleboyz. Everyone's talking about how good Gobsbreck is. You didn't choose to use Gobsbreck. Why?
I do love him. I have the like formal list of Kruleboyz. Every one of them have Gobsbreck, but in this particular one, you have to bring for 1 unit of allies. You have to bring 3 other units of your own. And when I had Gobsbreck, I had 3 units of allies and 11 units in total. So it was 1 unit too less to have 3 units of allies, and I really wanted to play with Stabas and with Spore Fanatics.
Yeah, I could see that. So you're you're choosing these allies instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's quite a different list. And you so from what I remember you saying, you chose this list because you felt like it was going to counter your meta, like the lists that you were expecting to play at this tournament. That some of the best armies out there were going to be weak to this list in particular. Is that correct?
It is in some way. Let's be honest. Top of the meta now. It's Seraphon.
Yeah.
It's in Poland. It's also OBR. OBR are quite good pairing for me, especially when you have 9 Bold Boys,
Yeah.
because they can really focus their shots on something. And with addition of Seraphon with their new book, it is really hard to play even with other sub allegiance. Of course, Gobsbreck there would be a great help, but suddenly you can teleport your own Bold Boys a little bit farther for your opponent to be within range with, for example, Crow. You can use your dirty tricks. Of course, it's not 100% sure, but you can try to take one of the Saurus guards back into the deep strike, and suddenly he is really vulnerable. So Kruleboyz can counter a lot of armies. They can play against Slanesh, which is also quite a popular army. Khorne is surprisingly good pairing for you, because Khorne wants to go into you.
Yes.
Basically, the one thing that you do not do then is casting your spells, because unfortunately most of the spells are going to affect big amounts of units. Boggy Mist or anything like that, it's mostly when you use it, it will target on whole army, or sometimes 4 or 5 units. So that's not a very usage for you, but you can shoot them quite easily
Yeah, I
from the
mean
27 inches and
nine
have
bull
fun.
boys with a poison is gonna
Yeah,
kill whatever it points at is gonna die.
yeah.
Right. And then anything that is a real problem, like anything that has, like a 5-up ward, a 4-up ward, you can use nasty hex, right? Like you have the tools
Right.
that you need to overcome what's in front
And
of you.
even if you are outside of range for nasty hex, you can use another unit of 9 Bold Boys.
Yeah, that's right.
And suddenly a lot of demons and other things like that are just melting away.
Right, right. 18 bull boys, right? That's a
Yeah,
lot of bull boys to shoot. And then this little unit of
21
3. Yeah.
holy.
Yeah. I think I have that many. I think I have 20. I think I have 24 bull boys, I think, on my shelf. So, I should put this list on the table. I'm sure that my friends would love me for it. So can you walk me through like all 5 turns, how you generally play your army, and specifically battle tactics? Like what are your 5 battle tactics over the course of the game? Like how are you looking to score these? Like what does a normal game look like for you playing this list?
Okay, it's really dependable from one thing. Will I start or will the opponent start? If you have to start, the easy battle tactic for the beginning, because you will not go outside um, of your deployment really easily, because a lot of times you would like to start from the first round with the bold boys, so they will don't move. Shamans will be close to them, so it is sketchy to try the tactic of leaving your deployment.
Yes.
Um, the tactic when you want to cast one spell that won't be unbind is really easy, because if you are going to be the first player, you will try to put the casters a little bit outside of this 30 inch to cast, for example, Choking Mist, which effectively have range of 30 inches because 24 plus 6.
Yes.
Um, so that's the easy one if you're the player that starts. However, even with the super sneaky, it's really, even if your opponent have one drop, you can force him to start the game, because you can just teleport to him breakables on Miracle Trogot,
Yep.
because he's doing amazing damage
Yep.
if he wants to, with finest hour in the first turn,
Yep.
fast turn to move him once, and he's not 4 inches from your screen. If you teleport them, or if your opponent do a little bit of mistake with screening himself, he can basically kill one key wizard or priest or anything like that, or
Or
just stop
anything.
you a little bit. Yeah, and that makes a lot of people think what they like to make you start, and so that's the reason why I'm not really starting as the first player a lot of times. If you are the second one, it's there are 2 possibilities. If you play against an aggressive army that's really trying to charge into you, sometimes I try to make the battle tactics with. Oh, sorry, I have it written down, but I cannot find the name. Time to get stuck in,
Yeah.
because you can do this only in the first or second battle round.
Yeah.
And when people charge on you head on, like Fechter Courts or other armors like that, that wants to get into you as soon as possible, because otherwise you can try to shoot them off the board. It's really easy, and you have to try to do it in the first or second battle round. Um, of course, take that, yes, suckers, to 10 damage basically, and don't get 10 back when you're playing a shooting army. Is safe bet,
Very
as
easy. Yeah,
yeah,
very
as
easy to
long as
get.
your opponent have any models on the table, you're probably able to do it. But that one I try to save for later. If there are no opponents in your within 20 inches, there GW gave us the new battle tactic to sneak up, which makes every crew where you have to put every Kruleboyz unit within 3 inches of the terrain. The key part is that only Kruleboyz,
So
so
the
you
right,
can
so all your
still move.
allies.
Yeah, they can still move
That's
further down
interesting.
the board. Yeah, that's really useful, especially on the stabas, which in the first round will be in melee -1 to hit and wound, which is great on them
Yeah,
because
that's
they are,
great.
yeah. Um, and then when you go through the rounds, I usually do all 3 of the orcs battle tactics, because with this list you can do only those 3, because you do not have Gobsbreck or Kragnos in your army.
Right. Time to get
But
stuck
it's
in, take that, you
yeah,
suckers, and sneak up. Okay. And then you all, and
yeah.
then also, sorry, carry on.
And then you can just go outside of your deployment in the first battle round. And usually, if you really need, if there is an opponent still on the table and you still have models, you can try to just cast the spell. And usually, the casters are not really survivable because if they are going close to you, you will kill the screens, you will kill the opponents that giving them lookout sword, and then the units that give them the lookout sword. And then it is sometimes better to just kill this one small caster that can teleport to you or run, get double turn, and shoot a blizzard into your unit of 9 Volt boys.
Mm-hmm.
So usually I do not have the problem in the fourth battle round. It is really hard for Kruleboyz to make the battle tactic where you are within all three edges of the board, not all
Yeah.
three, but three of them, because you usually want to stay as a castle, which do not promote going onto the almost every edge of the board. But usually with those five, you can end the game without a problem.
Yeah.
Of course,
Like,
there are some times where you would not try to cast the spell, but you can try to charge with the battle line because while using the Wa, you can easily charge with bold boys for them to kill something that is not so tough because they will have those 18 attacks. 6 will do 2 mortal wounds, 5 will do 1 in melee, which is still quite decent damage for a shooting unit. And then you can just go somewhere with the slash beast. So battle tactics for Kruleboyz are really easy in this uh, right now,
well, certainly
especially with the new
easier than
one.
they've been. I would say
Yeah,
that that big Wa right now has it easiest for the orcs, for sure.
yes, but for the orcs, Big War right now is the best faction.
Yeah.
Or should we call it Iron Jaws at Gobsbreck,
Yeah.
usually?
Pretty much. Iron Jaws plus.
Yeah.
That's my list. My list is Iron Jaws, Gobsbreck, and a Killbow. Right.
Okay, yeah,
Yep.
that's logic.
Yep. I mean, it's working. It's been pretty good. So this tournament, how did this tournament go for you overall? Like what went really well? What didn't go very well? Was there any like big moments that you were really excited for? Did you make any terrible mistakes? How was the tournament?
Tournament itself was great. Big mistakes. I don't know. It's really hard if you're playing Kruleboyz and you make like a small mistake.
Yeah.
It's basically easy win for your opponent.
Yes.
The whole army have 5 or 6 up save, so it's flying out of the board if something's trying to look at it. So if you're making big mistakes, it's really easy to just lose. Out of the 5 games, to be fair, the really funny was the last game against Flesh-Eater Chords because I played against Zombie Dragon and Terrorguides with heroes that were wizards, and we are playing the battle plan. I cannot remember the name of that, but wizards will explode on the 4-up
Right.
when your opponent will not have the shooting, and you can just blow up 14 wounds out of the other side of the board. It was sad because I killed one of the zombie dragons, and the effect of that was I made like 16 mortal wounds into him. He blew up on the 4-up and made 18 or something like that into his own army.
Yep. Sure. That's
And
fun.
it's like, sorry, mate.
Yes.
I did not want to do that.
Well, that's a pretty good thing for round 5, right? Like by the end of day 2, I find everyone's pretty tired, right? So
Yeah.
it's a good way to end it. Pretty easy win.
Yeah. The first day was a little bit harder. I played one game against Daughter of Cain, which are hard army to play. The second game against Seraphon, which had a changing luck from me and my opponent because both of us made roles that were almost impossible. For example, this unit of three skewer boys,
Hmm.
they killed Croak 1v1 in shooting.
Oh wow, just like that, just a bad roll
Yeah,
from the Croak player.
I made, let's say, a good roll. I made about 7 wounds or 8 into him, and he rolled 14 or something like that.
Right.
But in the other turn, the incarnate stayed one level longer than it should. So yeah, incarnate, it's a really bad matchup for Kruleboyz. If
Yeah.
you cannot kill something in one go,
Do you have any advice for playing against Kronspine?
it's hard.
It's
Really.
hard.
Yeah, because you cannot kill it in one turn, and most opponents, if they are playing Kronspine, they either play it in Zinch or in Seraphon, so you will have it automatically wild in the first turn.
Yeah.
And with that, you cannot do really much about it. If you start, you can try to put choking mist on him so he would not run, but then still your opponent will move his endless spells so he can charge on like 7 inches pile in and be within your screens. So unfortunately, Kronspine and Morathi, because I think that those are the only two models that you cannot kill in one go. They are terrible. If you
Yeah, a
cannot
lot of pain.
solve your problem once, it's hard for Kruleboyz.
Definitely. Okay, cool. Well, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover? I feel like we did a pretty good job of talking about, your list and the very specific tech that you have for the list. Um,
Um, I don't know. I'm honestly really surprised of the Beast Skewer Killbow. That's the last thing. Oh no, sorry, the second last thing in my list, except the Gravetide. Gravetide was a little bit of a mistake, I think. It was I took it so I can have any chances with um, Soulblight Gravelords, but you do not really have, unfortunately. When your opponent puts 200 zombies or 180 on the board, you just do not have damage in Kruleboyz. You can do a lot of them into one unit, but your opponent has 4 more of them.
and
You cannot.
you didn't like the kill bow either?
And no, Killbow is great, especially in the big yellers when you can reroll that one dice in the first turn.
Yeah.
So you can try to spike it, and it is really surprising for your opponent when you need for 80 points to roll that 6 up
Yep.
into one monster and do about 8-10 damage sometimes,
Yep.
which is quite fun.
There's 4 Gargant players at the tournament I'm playing in this weekend. So I'm hoping that my Killbow is going to do a lot of work there.
Take 2 or 3.
Well, I was thinking about it. I thought about it, but there's lots of other armies to consider as well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I do really think that from one side the problem, but from the other side it's a little bit of a bless for Kruleboyz is that they are quite good to play for the team tournament because you can quite easily counter a lot of armies that usually depend on thing that they can basically do always, like shooting magic from range or anything like that.
Right.
Because of course you can either have screens, you can block line of sight with the list that I had, you can change the sub allegiance, and then it's free real estate for shooting because you can shoot them, they can shoot you back. Um, so I think that for the team tournament, they are great. For single, you have to have a little bit of a lag because there are pairings like, for example, Soulblight Gravelords that are basically they are really hard to win because you cannot do anything about them. You just
Yeah.
do not have. You have quite steady output of damage, which is good for armies that are not that are elite or like in the middle. of the scale, but for against the horde armies, you're just throwing dice. Your opponents take off a couple of models. Turn later, they are back on the table.
Yeah, that can be very
So
frustrating for sure.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
After that,
Yeah. I sorry.
sorry.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. I appreciate it. I know it's 1 o'clock in the morning where you are, and you had a full day of work, right? So I appreciate
Oh,
you
not a
taking the time
problem.
and coming to talk to me.
Thank you also.
So what'd you think? Kruleboyz coming up with W's. Like, subscribe, wah.